I need to let you know a little bit of a secret. It's my birthday. Well, not actually my personal birthday, but it's the I was supposed to have a baby birthday. Well, okay, maybe not actually the I was supposed to have a baby birthday, but almost the I was supposed to have a baby birthday. Okay, I'm going to stop beating around the bush. Let me tell you. August 1st, 7 years ago, I was sitting on vacation with my husband, and I was just thinking, I really wanted to give back. I really wanted to do something for the fertility community that would help them feel less alone. I wanted people to feel like they belonged. And literally, as I was laying on a lounge chair, staring at the beach, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start this right now. I'd been thinking about the name for a while. One of our former board members, Toby Carpel, some of you may know her. She helped me kind of kick around different names, and we decided on I was supposed to have a baby. And the crazy thing is that it's now been, as I said, 7 years, and everything that we do here is just so much bigger, so much grander than I ever could have imagined when I was just sitting and staring at the ocean. But the way we do this, and the reason we can do all of this, is because every year around this time, when it's our birthday, we reach out to all of you, and we say, hey, if this is meaningful for you, if this has helped you feel like you belong, or if you have learned tools and tricks and ideas about how to make the people in your life who are really suffering, how to make them feel like they belong, then we ask you to give back. So now, between July 15th and July 21st, we are running our annual fundraiser. We always do it around this time of year from a Hebrew calendar perspective because it's during the 3 weeks, it's during the 9 days, and this time of year is always a sad one. It's filled with grief, it's filled with mourning, it's filled with pain, and that's so much of what we hold here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. So these 4 episodes that are coming out over the course of this week, the first one today is going to be about singles and egg freezing. We're going to have one episode on grief, all the different kinds of grief, and is there a better grief or a grief that's not big enough that you need to grieve it? I mean, okay, we all know the answer to that is no, but you'll listen to that episode. We have a 3rd episode from Naomi Nachman, who is a big Jewish kosher food blogger, talking for the first time about her pregnancy loss many years ago and her faith and all of the pieces since. And then we have Hadassah Manuela, who talks about still hoping, dreaming, planning for a baby that still is not here yet in her arms, but how to live a life and feel like you belong even while you're still waiting. So all this week, with our podcasts and all the different content that's coming out on social media, we're going to show you different facets of the work that we do. And we ask that you give back. So go to our website, www.iwassupposedtohaveababy.org. And thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all your support. And we can't wait for another 7 years. Okay. I know you just want to get to the episode already. Trust me. But I can't let you do that until I tell you about the amazing person who you're going to be listening to today. So first of all, our topic for this podcast is about Shidduchim, dating within the Orthodox world, and how that's led to egg freezing, frankly. It is a topic that is fraught in so many circles. But before I tell you about our anonymous guests, I want to read you something which I think will frame the entire discussion here, why this conversation was so important, and especially since we're focusing on belonging as the theme for this campaign. This snippet here actually comes from a sermon from a few months ago by Rabbi Weinberg from KMS, the Kemp Mill Synagogue in Silver Spring, Maryland. And he says, the longest narrative in Chaye Sarah, which is the fifth parsha in the book of Bereshit in Genesis, has a full 67 psukim, 67 lines, that is devoted to the search for a wife for Yitzchak, Isaac. It's striking that the Torah, which conveys entire systems of Jewish law with just a few words or letters, chooses to linger at length on the dialogue between Abraham's servant Eliezer and the family of Rivka, Rebecca. Chazal, our sages, famously remark that, quote, the everyday conversations of the servants of our forefathers are recorded at greater length than the halachos, the laws that are given to their descendants, end quote. Why? One answer is that this story is not simply about a shidduch, a search for a match. It is the first shidduch of the Jewish people, the foundation of the Jewish home. The Torah wants us to understand the essential partnership at the heart of every Jewish home, that divine providence works together with earnest human effort. On one hand, the fingerprints of God, of Hashem, are everywhere in this story. Avraham insists that God's angel will accompany Eliezer. Eliezer arrives at precisely the right moment. Rivka appears at the well with flawless timing. Her midot, her good deeds, shine immediately. Each step feels guided from above and nothing feels accidental. As Eliezer himself even says, blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not withheld his kindness and his truth from my master. As for me, the Lord has guided me on my way to the house of my master's relatives. Yet on the flip side, the Torah also emphasizes Eliezer's extraordinary human effort. He plans, prepares, travels, prays, tests, negotiates, etc. He doesn't assume that God will do the work for him, but take the work that he was putting in and channel it correctly. Quite the opposite. Because he believes Hashem is with him, he invests his full strength in the mission. Bitachon, faith, does not replace action. It inspires more action. This balance of deep faith and determined effort is the backbone of all life and Torah, but it is especially vital in building Jewish homes. Every shidduch, every match, contains elements that only God can orchestrate, but it also depends on the tireless work of people who care: parents, friends, mentors, and community members. It is they who must get involved when that help is wanted. They must get involved, they must notice, they must think, they must suggest, and support. As a community, we often think, or sometimes think, that shidduchim, or matchmaking, is somebody else's job, the domain of people interested in getting married who can look on their own, or online services, close friends, family, or in some circles, professional Shadchan and professional matchmakers. However, we must all recognize that the responsibility actually belongs to every single one of us. Hashem brings neshama to neshama, soul to soul, and he asks us to bring person to person. Our involvement, our willingness to think of others truly matters and can make all the difference. This episode is very powerful. It talks about the flaws in the system. And we're sharing it because our theme is belonging. And if so many people in our world feel outside the system, feel like they don't belong, feel like people don't care about them, then I believe that we have a responsibility to help them feel held. You know, we always talk about how being single is one of the best examples. It's certainly not the only example, but one of the best examples of what's called circumstantial infertility. There are so many people out there that are desperate to become parents, but the circumstances are such they're not married yet. Their circumstances are such that they don't have children yet. And many of them don't want to have children outside the confines of a marriage. They don't want to be a single parent, but there are some who do. So look, if you're single and you haven't found your partner, it means that you may not be able to have children. And so this idea of egg freezing actually, quote unquote, freezes that moment in time. It freezes your eggs so that a woman, a single woman, can use them at some later date. I am tremendously indebted to our guest for this episode. She chose to speak anonymously because she's sharing views that are not only her own. She has connected with so many other women over the years, and she shares here without her name, without her community, without her age, so that she can be, quote, every woman. So I urge you to listen carefully to this episode, to look around in your communities, your friends, your families, everywhere really, and to see the people who are still hoping and wishing and waiting. And let's move beyond the, I'm davening for you, I'm praying for you, or the Emir Hashem by you, that I hope one day God will smile down upon you and find you your match. Let's move beyond that and let's actually help them feel like they belong. Take a listen. Let me know what you think of the episode. Hi, I'm Dr. Aimee Baron, the founder and executive director of the nonprofit I Was Supposed to Have a Baby. On this podcast, I invite different people to join me in conversations about infertility, pregnancy loss, infant loss, surrogacy, adoption, and so much more. We laugh, we cry, and we challenge the Jewish community to think differently about a topic that has been shrouded in secrecy and shame for so long. So join me as we talk away the taboo. Welcome, everybody. We don't often have episodes with people who are anonymous. I'm honored, really, to be part of a movement, let's call it, where because of the work of I Was Supposed to Have a Baby and because of this podcast, we have done a lot of work in the Jewish community at large, talking about the taboo and breaking down a lot of these stigmas. And so I'm thrilled that so many of our guests and people that I speak to, both here on the podcast and people who share their stories with me that we share on social media and on our website, people do use their names. And it's not that they're proud of what they've been through, because I don't know that anybody can be proud of pain, but they feel comfortable sharing because there are people before them that have done that. And that I think so much of the stigma surrounding like the reasons why people didn't talk about it was because people maybe thought that it would affect their Shidduch chances. Trust me and everyone, we're going to get into many of these discussions today. This is a very long introduction, but I promise you, we're getting to our amazing guest in 1 second. Okay, maybe not 1 second. Give me one more minute. And I don't know the other reasons. I mean, I'm not here to give you a diatribe as to why fertility challenges have been taboo, but why are we here today? We're here today with this incredible individual who wants to remain private as she's sharing her story here. And you know what? I love that. I absolutely love that and deeply respect it, because there are people in the world just like this person who don't feel comfortable yet using their name, but deeply believe that the story is important and the experience of what this person has been through is important to share with the community at large so that other people will feel less alone. And so I love the fact, I love when people reach out and say, hey, like, I really want to talk about this, but I'm really not comfortable yet. I'm like, great. So for all the people out there that have a story that is buried deep in their hearts that still are not comfortable using their name, please reach out because I would be honored to share your words. And for all the people that have already gotten to the other side, obviously we're here for that too. But without further ado, I really want to introduce our guest and just I'm not even going to tell you anything more about her. I'm going to let her introduce herself. It's a her. Okay, fine. I outed her. It's a female. Okay, fine. It's a female. Here we go. That's all I'm going to say. And now I'm passing it to you. Thank you so much for trusting me and for being here.
Thank you, Aimee, for having me, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. So what I want to add to that is when we first started talking about my coming on the podcast, because you and I had several conversations offline. We've met in person offline. For everybody listening, Aimee is real. She does exist, not just on social media or the virtual space. But we decided as we were talking, this started as it was going to be an egg freezing conversation, and it evolved to I could come on and I could tell my story about going to the clinic and getting the shots and what that was like. And we're going to get into a little bit of that experience as we go through the podcast. But we decided for many reasons I would be anonymous because I decided I don't want this to be my personal story. I want this to be a story where I am speaking for a group that has largely felt unseen in our community, in the Orthodox Jewish community. I want to specify that because I know I was supposed to have a baby, serves the entire Jewish community. I'm going to speak specifically about the Orthodox Jewish community because I could be any 30-something or 40-something-year-old single woman from a modern Orthodox Machmir background who is still single and who has gone through the egg freezing process. I want to speak for the group about what the experience is like and how we got to the point where egg freezing is a relevant conversation in our community, that it is being talked about on social media, in public lectures, in magazines that would have never previously published anything about egg freezing several years ago. How did we get here? And that's not my story. That's the story of so many of your listeners and so many of your followers, because I follow your content and I see the anonymous comments. I listen to your other guests who are Orthodox and single, and I know that we're coming from the same or very similar place. So how did we get here? Things don't happen in a vacuum. There has to be cause and effect. And that's why I'm speaking anonymously.
Thank you again for being here. Thank you for taking on this mission, so to speak, of like moving beyond yourself, really, and wanting to have this discussion sort of writ large about what is going on in the community. And like, we're obviously having this discussion so that we can air all of the pieces and try to make it better for people. So just, I can't, like, we can't go further until I just say, like, just thank you. Thank you again for being here and for trusting me.
Thank you, Aimee. And you're right. We want to make it better, and that's the goal. How do we change the experience? How do we create more understanding and more awareness and more empathy around this population? So, as I said, this is not my personal story, but I'm going to put in a little bit of a personal piece just to kind of set the stage. So, when I got to the point of egg freezing, I started looking into it, investigating. I will say that I'm a healthcare professional, a healthcare provider, and connected in that medical healthcare community. So I had contacts where I could quietly do my research. I spoke with Shadchan, one of the Orthodox Jewish fertility organizations, and they were recommending certain clinics in New York City, highly recommended clinics that rate in the top 5, and they are excellent. But there are many pieces to egg freezing: social, emotional, financial, and logistical. And I knew living in suburban New York City, that was going to add a piece to have to go into the city, that logistical piece of getting there for early morning appointments, traffic, public transportation. And then it was, okay, do I tell people at work? Do I explain why I'm late? Am I comfortable, even in a healthcare setting, to talk about this because this is my personal life? Wasn't secret, but I felt it was best to keep it private. So I researched clinics that they were more geographically convenient, but still excellent, looking, quietly making inquiries with colleagues and doing my research relative to SART statistics. Those are the success statistics of a clinic. And I knew that this was a solid clinic with a solid lab. The lab is extremely important when you're doing any type of fertility treatment. So, and I knew that this clinic was experienced with Orthodox Jewish patients, Orthodox Jewish couples. When I came in, my doctor was Jewish, not Orthodox. I was his first Orthodox Jewish single woman. So that
Wow.
is
Wow.
kind of key. He had worked with Orthodox couples for 25 years. He was very familiar with the sensitivities around that, but I was his first encounter with an Orthodox single woman. So first he was surprised by me personally. I remember he looked at me and said, "You're smart, you're pretty, who wouldn't want you?" Not in not like an you kind of way, but just in a kind grandfather type of way. He couldn't understand why somebody who looked like me was single in a world where he knew that women traditionally get married young. And then in the conversation, when I mentioned I had spoken with a time, that's where he was even more surprised. The question was, there are that many of you that a time is behind this, that a time is involved. And that's what was shocking. There were that many that now it's a thing.
In today's day and age, it's 2026, there are a gazillion conversations about egg freezing, and many different Jewish fertility organizations are involved in that. So I'm just curious about what we're talking about.
I'll give a general idea that it was 8 years ago before the conversations were out there publicly the way they are today.
Got it.
At that point, the conversations were happening, but more quietly, and it was shortly after that that they started to become more public. So that's another reason why that doctor was not yet aware of single women in the Orthodox community freezing their eggs. The physicians at the clinics in New York City were already quite familiar with that population. This being suburban New York City, he had not yet seen that. And because he wasn't living in the Orthodox world, he was not exposed to the conversations of the Orthodox world. So that's kind of putting that in there. So there were two pieces: when it happened and where he personally was living and what was coming into his clinic. So again, now we talk about how we got here. How did we get to the point where this is a relevant conversation that now, as you said, there are conversations publicly in publications, on social media. It's out there on podcasts. So what got us here? So we talked about in the Orthodox community, there was the term, even before egg freezing was a thing, Shidduch crisis. Whether you like that term or you don't like that term, that's not a debate for here. This was discussed. It was out there. It was being discussed at conventions of the OU, the Orthodox Union, conventions for Torah U'Mesorah, that was for Orthodox educators. The Aguda convention, Aguda is a kind of right-wing branch of Orthodoxy. It was out there. People were talking about Shidduch crisis, Shidduch crisis. There is a problem. People aren't getting married at young ages. We have more and more older singles. But in my mind, there was a lot of talk and no real concrete productive solutions for how are we going to fix this. Then the conversation, we moved to egg freezing, but we haven't really connected the dots between that Shidduch crisis and the egg freezing. So I am speaking for the group to speak about why and how that happened. How did we get there? And being anonymous kind of allows me to be an everybody, an every woman. So
I know we're going to get into it, but can I ask you, like, do you I'm guessing we're like, do you have a theory? And maybe we're getting into this. Do you have a theory as to why you think people didn't connect the dots?
I think people didn't connect the dots, Aimee, because it's easier not to connect them. It's easier to it's taboo. Really, we don't want to admit that something was broken that led to this. We don't want to talk about that. It is the elephant in the room. So I think that people either know it and don't want to acknowledge it, or people were oblivious to that. I will say that I think those conversations are changing a bit because there are social media, there are platforms, and the conversations are being had publicly now in the more recent years where they weren't. So I think the dots are starting to connect, but I don't think they fully connected. So
And what you mean by that is like that all a lot of these initiatives with these like YU Connects and Saw You at Sinai and a number of these other like there are 15 other platforms I know now for dating. You're saying like none of those things existed then. It was still sort of in the traditional system, and so people weren't thinking creatively about how to solve the Shidduch crisis, and instead it was kind of like, well, here's a solution for people who aren't married yet. Let's just freeze their eggs and kind of freeze time. Is that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is
yeah,
that
yes
effectively
and
what
no.
you're saying?
Certainly, while I was going through egg freezing, Saw You at Sinai was there. Did that help an issue? Did it feed into that? That's another well, we could get to that. I think the realizations came that we need to start the efforts when people are younger. Why you connects in the immediate years post college. We have more efforts to create spaces for people, singles, to meet more organically at younger ages, more platforms to connect than there were in the past. I think people are realizing, yes, we kind of need to allow some mixing of the genders that wasn't happening before. And there's those pieces, and we are having the conversations about what's wrong and how we can fix it that we weren't having 8 years ago. I think so much has changed in this very, very short period of time. So a lot of things have kind of evolved to where the conversations are happening now.
Okay. Okay. As you were sharing those pieces, I was like, wait, what's now? There were all these different initiatives. I didn't realize it didn't exist back then.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
So
we're not
now,
going back that far. And
yeah.
even, I want to say, even with the initiatives, it's still not fixing everything.
Yeah. Without question. I mean,
Right.
obviously. But
Obviously.
obviously. Okay. So now it's kind of like take us back and like the why and like where we are and your thoughts on, you know, your background and how you got to this point.
Okay, so that's good. So again, I'm anonymous because I could be anybody. I came from a very traditional, modern Orthodox your background, a community where we emphasize community values, family values, religious values, educational values, and the normal trajectory that you're going to build the Jewish home of your own. My childhood was very typical. I went through the yeshiva day school system, preschool through 12th grade, camp, seminary in Israel, Stern College, which is a very, very typical path for most people in this world. My parents both came from Orthodox backgrounds, so I was from birth Orthodox from birth. My parents were Orthodox from birth. They had a nice reputation in the community, a family with a Shem Tov, with a good name. We had extended family in our community, in nearby communities, other places in the United States. And my family had a very nice social circle of friends within our community, within our shul, within our synagogue. So a very, very typical path. So then you get to dating and you see family, friends, or relatives where they got married young and everybody seemed to meet easily. And you think that's going to be your path also. Did I think I would marry the first guy I went out with? No. But I thought this will happen within a few years. Relatives will make suggestions. Family friends will make suggestions. You may have to call a couple of Shadchanim, some matchmakers. You're in Stern, you meet people. And at that point, again, just you talked about why you connect and things like that. There are currently more the structure of the Stern Yeshiva University system is set up more for people to be able to meet in organic ways. In my time, it was a lot of go uptown to the boys' campus, uptown in the Heights, and there'll be a lecture, men on one side of the aisle, women on one side of the aisle. It wasn't a whole lot of, or go to this farm stand and hang out and hope you meet somebody in the aisles. It wasn't.
Totally.
It wasn't a whole lot of the activities there are today.
By the way, just as an explanation for the people who are listening, we're using very words and terms and kind of situations that are only
they're known in the Orthodox
right,
world.
known in the Yeshiva University, the YU sort of Machmir world, like just to give all of you a little bit of a clue into what we're talking about here. So Yeshiva University every year, I believe it's in February. I might be wrong about that, but I believe it's in February. For a month, they basically gather like every single or most of the Hebrew and Judaica books and also a lot of Judaica items. And they put them on sale on some deep discounts. Like I'm not here to promote the sale or not the sale. I'm just trying to explain the setting. And basically, because it's on the campus of Yeshiva University, on the boys' campus. And basically, there are boys, college men and college women who are the salespeople at this sale. So immediately there's like a mixed environment where, you know, I can't believe I'm saying this, a boy and a girl. I need to like a college man. And I hate using boys and girls to describe men and women, right at whatever age they are, who are single. I hate that. So I'm really trying not to use those terms. But basically, because there's this forced connection where they're both, you know, behind the counter and blah, blah, blah. So you have this like natural interaction. And then because there are always like guys around who are looking for Sfarim, and then like the girls from Stern campus, the girls campus come up and they're like, it's this quote unquote kosher way to meet someone, like kind of like a kosher mixer, so to speak, but it's actually the Sfarim sale. That's basically what we're talking about here. So just to give people a little bit of context.
And it's not intended as a mixer, but it was either the speech where you're on the lecture where you're on one side of the aisle, or there was that opportunity. But now I know from people who are there, who have been there after my time, there are more activities that encourage the organic interaction between the genders in a appropriate fashion, you know, for a religious institution. So, but it wasn't like that then. So I thought, you know, people are going to set me up, and it's going to be guys. I describe what I'm looking for, and they will be in the ballpark. You know, the learner and the earner, socially normal with it. I don't know how else to describe it. Not the cool dude, just regular, normal. And I quickly saw that it did not look like that. It looked like something totally different. There was a disconnect between how the system was working and what I thought how it would work and how it actually worked. And it was a mismatch between what women were looking for and what the system was actually producing. And I think that was very specific just in conversations I've had with other people and people I've met along the way in this middle of the road, modern Orthodox Machmir camp. Friends or high school classmates from high school, seminary, if they were leaning toward more yeshivish and they wanted somebody who was learning in Lakewood, which is a big yeshiva, or that type where they were going to go to Israel and that man was going to learn for several years. They dated for a few weeks, got married within a couple months. That happened a little bit differently. This was kind of more in the modern Orthodox Machmir camp. So there was this mismatch between how we thought it was going to work and how we thought it was going to look. And one of your previous guests, Aimee, said it really well. And I've listened to many of your podcasts, and obviously the ones with other single women speak to me because I feel like I hear pieces of my own experience in their story. And you had somebody, Jordana Brown, on, and she is a single mother by choice, a mother by choice, not single by choice. And she said a line that just spoke to me. She said, the guys who are nothing are made to be something, and the women who are something are made to be less than. So
Uh-huh.
those matches aren't happening. And I hope I'm quoting her right. I think I'm pretty close to it. When I heard her, I'm like, I don't know who this Jordana is, but you go, girl. I felt so validated. Somebody actually said what it looked like, how there was this mismatch, and the matches weren't happening or they weren't working. And the other piece is you think, okay, your dating guy is going to come, pull up, knock on your door, say hello to your parents, and take you out on a date. And it wasn't working like that either. It became, oh, you need to go into the city to meet. He doesn't have a car. He works. He's tired. You have to go meet him. And I'm thinking, like, wait, I also have a job. But it's not like I'm sitting home and watching Netflix. So there was meeting, being dropped off by trains, by subways at night. There was many times no consideration for safety. Take a train, take an Uber, and I could have a whole podcast of stories of mine, my friends, but it's like I said, it was a mismatch between what the system produced and how it worked. In one line, it's the women were often expected to accommodate endlessly, whether logistically, socially, and emotionally, and the behavior of the men was almost normalized or excused. I think
Why? I'm like sitting here. Sorry. I'm like, I'm just sitting here kind of like with my mouth open. And like, what? How did this happen? Like, how was this? Like, I almost like don't even know what to say. I'm like so astounded and horrified.
yes, it is horrifying. And how did it happen? I don't know. I don't have an answer for how this became normalized and the people who were making the matches or who set it up, most of them didn't even seem phased when you said you had to take a train or travel into the city at night or were left on a street corner or taking trains or Ubers. It was almost like I said, it was normalized or excused. Well, he can't come to you. He doesn't have a car. Well, he can't come on a weeknight because he works and he's tired, but you could go into the city and meet him. But I also have a job. I'm also working. So somehow there was this disconnect, and I think it ties into a Jordana's line. The onus was on the women very often, not always. I want to say this, not always, but often, to make the logistics of the date happen. And I want to add that if we didn't make it happen, we were looked at. And I say we because these are not just my stories, they are the stories that I've heard from friends, from others. If we didn't, we were looked at as difficult, inflexible, rigid, not willing to accommodate. One of my friends had a line. She said, we're expected to twist ourselves into a pretzel. Correct. And I don't know how that happened. I think it just little by little happened. And it was kind of like, we know this is broken. And in order to fix it, we're going to put the onus on the women to do this. And you feel, it's a word I'm going to use as we go through our conversation, deprioritize. Your need, your safety, your work schedule is deprioritized. The message is you need to accommodate the man. You need to go meet him at the Starbucks of his convenience. To sum it up,
Yeah.
very, very often this is the way. And I don't know how we got here exactly. Again, I think little by little, because people see the system is broken. So women have to do anything to just get a date. You have to twist yourself into the pretzel to get a date. But
I,
nobody's seen, yes, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. But nobody.
Nobody was seeing that, hey, this is a lack of midot, of character, of just basic derech eretz, basic kavod habriot. That was lost on so many people. It was normalized. It was excused.
I normally don't reveal anything personal, or try beyond like my own fertility story on just in general through this work. But I have to say here, as a mother right now of a daughter in Shidduchim, um, I am. She's young, to be very clear. She's very young. Um, None of what you described has happened thus far. And I am, I'm thrilled that that is the case. However, it makes me think two things. One is that either it's just that she's still too young, too early in the process, and so therefore she's not expected yet to have to twist herself into a pretzel to accommodate the other side, or two, um, or maybe let's say it that way, um, the system is changing. And it's a little, and it's better for whatever reason in her experience right now. Um, I'm hearing this, and as a mother of a daughter, I am horrified, horrified.
Yes. And it is horrifying. And again, it's not only my experience. I could find you 130 something or 40 something modern Orthodox Machmir single women, and they will all tell you, yes, this has happened to me to some extent, or even somebody who got married older in their 30s or 40s. If they're listening, they're probably all shaking their heads. Yes, yes. I was left on a street corner. I was left to take a subway alone at night. I was left to take a train. I was told to drive in. I was told to fly in, take a train, whatever it is. So all the while that is going on, there's another piece of this that I know you've addressed also. There's a lot of judgment because people don't see the behind the scenes. What they see is the woman who is single, the woman who, like my fertility doctor, couldn't understand why I was single. So they see somebody who is smart and pretty and educated and nice family, good job, and she's single. Therefore, it must be her fault. And there was a lot of that judgment. And I know there have been pieces written about this. You know, you're too picky, you're too selfish, you're too rigid, you're too set in your ways, you're too smart, you're too accomplished, you're too focused on your career. We were all too something. And people just make assumptions based on the experience of one person. But a woman in the community called me. Already I was over 30, and she calls me up and says, "Hi, how are you? I'd like to go out for coffee. Can we go out and have coffee?" And I thought, this is weird. Like, why does this woman want to have coffee with me? Like, what does she want? What's coming here? This was a woman my mother's age, my mother's peer. Why did she want to have coffee with me? It was just bizarre. And I was like, why do you want to have coffee? And she was being kind of cagey. And then she finally said, well, because so and so and I are talking to all of the women in the community who are in their 30s to suggest that they see a therapist so that will help them get married because we know somebody that worked for. So we want to suggest that to everybody else in this group. And
If you can't hear me laughing, I'm laughing right now. I'm laughing. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I'm obviously
of course
laughing.
it's ridiculous. Of course it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I knew who they were likely referring to. And that woman had dated many men, one after the other, and had a long series of relationships. And at one point I had a conversation with that woman and I said, have you ever like talked to somebody and kind of, worked that out? And that person had a different dating experience than a lot of other women. It did seem to come a little bit more easily to her, at least the opportunities. So, and she did get married. And these two people were making generalizations about a whole group from the experience of one person. The woman who called me had no idea what my dating experience looked like. She assumed it looked like the other person, and that wasn't the case at all. So she just assumed I needed to be fixed. It would have been so different had she said, I'd like to go out for coffee to talk to you if you'd like some chizuk or some coaching or a listening ear. I'd like to show you some support instead of, something's broken in you. We need to fix it so you could get married. Obviously, I did not go and have coffee with her. I pretty much told her on the phone, no, and she was lucky that I didn't hang up on her. So here, you're in this system where there's a mismatch between what you expect and what it's producing. You're deprioritized as far as arranging the dates. And then there's judgment about why you're single. The comments I've heard, you don't really want to be married. If you wanted to be married, you would be already. You don't try hard enough. You're not open minded enough. So, and none of those things were true.
I just can't. Like, people actually said these things to you? Like, actually.
People, all of them, every single one. And I know, Aimee, there will be other women listening, single women listening, or women who married in their 30s or 40s. They'll be shaking their heads and they'll say, I heard this too. So we internalize the communal message that if things aren't working, something must be wrong with us. But there was little acknowledgement of this larger dynamic that so many of us were experiencing. And I think, as we said earlier, that those conversations, I think this piece is changing. I think at this point, there are, unfortunately, for better or worse, such a large group of women who are single in their 30s and 40s, not only in the modern Orthodox matchmaker group, but in the modern group, in the more yeshivish group, that we can no longer write it off and say it's the women. We can't say all these women are too picky, too difficult, too selfish, too rigid. There are other factors in play. So, and those conversations are changing because of voices on social media. Sepulveda Gradko, shout out to her. She's such an important voice for this group, and she's really doing amazing and beautiful work. So thank you, Sepulveda, for all of that. And Sepulveda also talks about how much judgment there is and the assumptions. And one of the things she said on a recent podcast was, don't limit Hashem. Don't decide who you think is good for somebody. Let the single person make that decision, present it, let them say yes or no. Do not limit Hashem. But yet, with so many aspects of the dating system, we do limit Hashem. We do limit God because we make judgments, and I say the broader community, not the singles, are making assumptions and judgments about who is worthy, who isn't worthy. This I want to say on a podcast because I think when you say to me, do people actually say these things to you? There was a time where a friend said to me, there's this guy, I think he'd be great for you. Call this and this Shadchan, this matchmaker, she knows him. I had called this woman once and it wasn't a great experience, but I figured, give the benefit of the doubt. I will try again, and I'm coming with a specific name rather than just saying, do you know anybody for me? And I called her up and I said, hi, how are you? My friend so-and-so, you made her Shidduch, you made her match. She suggested this man, she said, you know him. And the woman's response to me was, and I am quoting, his mother has an agenda and you are not on it.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Like, even if the answer is no, which clearly here it was, like, there is also a menschlich, like a kind way of saying, thank you so much for asking. I'll look into it and get back to you. Or I'm not so sure it's shaykh. I'm not so sure it's appropriate, but I can let you know. Like that, wow.
Exactly. There are ways to say things that aren't hurtful. And I know Sepulveda talks about that too. When you say words to somebody that make them feel less and make them think they deserve less. So again, we're internalizing the message that we're broken. Something needs to be fixed in us. And that's why we're single. We deserve less. We've heard all of those things. So again, I think, or I hope those conversations are changing. And correct, there was a much nicer way for that woman to say it in a way that didn't need to be so hurtful. So here we are. We are doing everything right. We've gone through a system. We are working. We're volunteering. We're involved in our community, in organizations, in our shul, in our synagogue, with our families. We're actively dating, trying to get married. And as you always say, Aimee, and yet, it did not yet work out. And here's all of these women who are confused and exhausted physically and emotionally, trying to understand how they ended up here.
Yeah. And I guess my question is, was there ever a point where, I mean, like a lot of times I've heard from other people I've spoken to on this podcast and also in life, like people are like, oh, you're being too narrow, like you're being too picky. Like, oh, you only want someone who is like, who's never been divorced, who's never been married. Oh, you only want someone who hasn't had kids yet. Like, was there ever, like, did it get to the point for you where you're like, well, maybe I should expand. Like maybe I should kind of think about other people and not, originally what was on my list. I mean, I'm like saying this sort of in this like tongue in cheek way because I realize now by me even asking you this question, I'm actually doing to you what everyone else has done to you before. Like it asked you, like asking you to like not believe that Hashem can like take care of it. I'm asking you to bend and you to be flexible and like where I'm not asking, like I haven't said the same thing to a guy. So like as I'm saying these words, I'm like reeling it back in my mouth.
Right.
And the question is still out there. So
Yes, I hear you. So yes, when the dating pool expands to include men who have been previously married, yes. I have dated men who are more religious, less religious, previously married with children. Yes. I think a lot of the women are exactly as you said, being more open-minded, being more flexible, dating people they may not have considered dating at an earlier point in their dating career. Yes, all of those things have occurred. They are occurring. Yes, that is true. And it's funny, Aimee, you said, I'm doing exactly the things that people say to you. You're not open-minded enough. You're not flexible enough. Yes, but there's another piece that I also want to talk about because when we say Shidduch crisis, a lot of people don't like that term. They say, I'm not a crisis. The situation is a crisis. I'm not the crisis. And one of the hardest things for singles to articulate is the struggle isn't just being single. It's you're trying to change your reality and feeling invisible in the process or feeling less than in a community because we revolve around marriage and family. And so while all this is going on and you're trying to expand your dating pool and cast a wider net, people tell you, call this Shadchan, reach out to this person, be proactive, network, be on the dating site, spend Shabbat in other communities, go meet new people. And for the record, I've done all of those things. And people do exactly that. But then there's this more disconnect between the urgency that we feel we're putting in the the effort, and the way the process is treated by others. So people make suggestions. They don't follow up. You try to be the proactive one and follow up, and your voicemails, your texts, your emails, they go unanswered. Months are passing between dates and conversations. 6 weeks here, 6 months here, 3 weeks here, 3 months there. And then it's another Rosh Hashanah, another Sukkot, another Pesach, and another year passes, and you're in shul again on Rosh Hashanah, and how did this happen? And the explanations are often understandable. People tell you I'm sorry, I didn't get to it. They're busy with smachot, with weddings, with bar mitzvahs, with varts, engagements, parties, brises, children, Yom Tov, holidays, work, school, family life. You hear this over and over and over again, and then it becomes yet another painful message. Everyone else's family life takes precedence over the life you're trying to build. All of the women who are reaching out and networking and being proactive want to be busy with the same thing you're telling them you're too busy with, and that's why you didn't follow up on the suggestion. So it's another message that you're internalizing, the gradual feeling that you're longing to build a family is somehow less urgent, less visible, and less important than the lives already being lived around you.
Yeah. And I think, and I think that like so much of what you're saying now is so palpable, like for everyone in the fertility community at large. Like obviously we're talking about the experience of singles right now, but the always looking on the outside, like feeling on the outside and looking in, everybody else seeming busy and you're not busy. Everybody else, having so many other pieces that their lives are full. And it's not that your lives aren't full, but they're full in different ways because there's still this very big gap. And so just as I'm hearing you talking about this, I'm just reminded that like it's exactly the same for like any kind of fertility yearning, any kind of yearning of the sort of the haves and the have-nots. And like a lot of why are we having this conversation to begin with? We're doing this because our job, my job at here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby is to bring light to these pieces that often are not talked about enough so that we can be more sensitive to the people who are going through it. And so, yes, when your lives are full, sorry, this is me giving a little bit of a PSA, like my life is full. All of our lives are full. And like, we have to remember the people whose lives look different. And so for the people who are on the sidelines, please, please, please remember them, please.
Yes. And thank you for saying that, Aimee. So your longing starts to feel like an interruption. When you keep getting told, oh, I'm busy with my kid's school, I'm busy with Yamdiv, I'm
Yeah.
busy hosting a Shabbat Brachot, I'm busy going to a wedding, your longing feels like an interruption. You feel like
And to be clear, what does it mean to actually follow up with an idea? I know because I've been on the other side of this. Like I'm making suggestions and I'm also receiving suggestions for my daughter. Like it's a text. It's not more than a text. It doesn't take long. Like it's just a text. Like, yes, obviously if there's the nuance, will he respond, the follow up with that person, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like it's a text. You can do it right before you get out of bed, or get out of bed in the morning. You can do it before you go to bed. You can do it as okay, I'm not telling you to take your phone into the bathroom, but lots of people do. There are lots of like small snippets, that you can find time to do these things. So just another like,
yes,
how's it putting up?
that is very true. In this age of e-communication,
Yeah,
it is easier to follow up. Now, sometimes there are things that do require an actual conversation,
of
but
course.
there are so many ways to follow up. So after a while, you just give up with that person or that
Yep,
lead because you stop asking, not because we don't want marriage, because we feel like a burden for wanting it
yep,
so badly.
yep.
So the
Because how
experience is
many times can you ask about something and the person's like, "Oh yeah, I have to get back to you. Oh yeah, I forgot to reach out. Oh yeah, oh cool. Let me check on it again." And then when they don't get back to you, you're left hanging. Like I always say, like I so much prefer when people get back to me and say, like, actually the answer was no. Like just give me the answer so I can move on.
exactly,
Like stop making me
exactly
look like a nebuch. Like yeah,
correct. A nebuch because you're constantly begging. You're a
someone who's
bother.
pitied. Nebuch meaning someone
Pity,
who's
the
pitied. Yeah,
nebuch, the pitied person or the bother. Exactly.
yeah,
So you're trying so sincerely and so proactively, but the message is your need is on the back burner. So
yeah.
we have a dating experience where there's a disconnect, a dating experience where the onus is on the women. Their logistics, their life is not a priority. You're told again you're not a priority, and then you asked about dating men who've been previously married.
Right.
And
I was going to say, and then you're saying, actually, have you like decided to expand your pool?
yeah, so
Yeah.
going
Right.
back to that, that brings in a whole other layer of pieces because now one side is coming with a former spouse, children, custody, all of those pieces. It's not just the man, there are the children too. And, and blended families can be beautiful. I know many situations where a single never married woman married a previously married man and it worked well. But I also know many situations where it did not work and it ended in divorce. Now, again, I'm not behind anybody's closed door, but I can speak to my own experiences of dating in that pool. It was the same, the deprioritization continued. It was, well, you have to accommodate. Well, you have to understand he has to deal with his ex-wife. Well, you have to understand he has children. You just have to be mavater. You have to give in. It's better to be married than to be single. You can't be rigid. You can't be selfish. We're not talking about just you and a man. Suddenly there's a man in your life and in your bedroom. Now there's a man in the bedroom and there's children down the hall in the bedroom and there's logistics of kids may need to have homework done, school lunch is made, dinner on a table, where it's a massive change, not just you and a man building a life. And if you're not a priority in those relationships, it's not going to work. And again, our communal language goes along with, well, if you can't make this work, it's because you're too selfish and you're too rigid and you're not flexible enough. So there is that piece to it. There is that piece. And again, not to bring my personal story into it, but there is one of my personal relationships that you and I have talked about offline where that was the exact situation where I was constantly deprioritized in the relationship. Some of the people who were involved in that match were telling me, give in and be mevater, give in. That's mevater. But I was very lucky that the rabbi involved and the therapist who was outside the Orthodox community, they all basically said, this can't work. You are not his priority. You will never be his priority. This isn't going to be a healthy marriage. And even the man's best friend had tried to talk to him and said, if you want it to be good with your children, it needs to be good with her first. And it wasn't going. So I was very lucky. I was very lucky and grateful that the rabbi involved did not see this through the typical communal lens and put the blame on my doorstep. He said to me, I can't imagine somebody being more patient, tolerant, sensitive, and fair-minded than you have been in this situation. So there is that piece. There is the piece that a lot of the men who've been previously married with children don't want more children. So they'll date the single, never married woman, but they're not on the page to have more children, or they're not on the page of having more children involves medical intervention, involves fertility treatment. Or there are situations where the man might be willing, but the logistics of a former spouse, 50% custody, children under a roof make that very difficult. So it's difficult when you're not just the man involved, but a previous family, children who have physical and emotional needs, and then the logistics of potentially mixing fertility treatment in. It's a very complex situation. It's not so simple. So you have all of that. It just adds layers of stress that I think people outside the situation don't see. And they may see the situations that are presented on social media that look very shiny, that look very successful, when it's not the reality for many women in this situation at all. And like I said, I know people, I was lucky when I was in those situations, I was able to end it, or it had to be ended, sometimes very painfully, because we saw that it could not go forward. But I also have friends that got married. It was very joyous, or it seemed very joyous, and then it ended in divorce in a short time later because they were deprioritized in the relationship. And I remember when one friend got divorced after a few months, she said to me, nobody realizes how hard it was for me to leave that marriage. And I said to her, I realize how hard it was.
Hi, everyone. It's Aimee. I just wanted to take a quick moment to say that if talking away the taboo means something to you, if you've listened to an episode and felt less alone, more seen, or more understood, please support us so we can continue doing this important work. Everything we offer, this podcast, our support groups, our resources, all of them are completely free. And that's intentional, actually, because we never want someone to have to choose between getting help and affording it. But truthfully, we can't do this without your help. So if you're in a position to give even just a little, it really helps keep us going. It helps someone else find the support that they need too. So please donate at iwassupposedtohaveababy.org/donate. It's really easy and it really makes a difference. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being part of this community.
And I remember when one friend got divorced after a few months, she said to me, nobody realizes how hard it was for me to leave that marriage. And I said to her, I realize how hard it was. I know how badly you wanted to be married. And I know that the situation must have been absolute hell for you in order to leave. So I saw that as her peer, but other people in her life told her, you were too rigid, you were too inflexible, and you didn't try hard enough to make it work, when none of that was true. So we
Yeah,
had,
I over and over again, in this conversation, you're like you're painting this picture. It's so deeply disappointing. And I think about like the idea that the deeply disappointing from a communal perspective. And what I mean by that is, you know, what, like if we go back to some of the things that we were talking about earlier, like why is there a taboo? Why is there a stigma around talking about fertility challenges? Why did that generally exist? And I mean, I think one reason, maybe I'll posit now, just after like hearing you talk now for so much about this, is maybe because like we place such emphasis on the family unit, and we place such emphasis on having children to teach that to the next generation, right? Vishinam tam levanecha, like the words of literally teaching it to your children. And when people don't fall within those confines where it doesn't happen for them as readily as it does for other people, it's like instead of kind of taking care of those people and making sure they're emotionally whole and supporting them in their lives wherever, whatever stage they're at, it's let's just push people towards what we think should be the right thing, what we think the communal norm is, and like stay in bad situations or be in a bad relationship or twist yourself into a pretzel just to like meet the guy who you like, who hopefully like will propose to you at some point so you can get yourself out of this miserable existence that you're in. And I'm like, I'm just hearing all of this and taking it in. And you know, so much of the work that Sephora does and many other people do is around like, there isn't a Shidduch crisis. There's a Bein Adam L'Chavero crisis. There's a crisis about how we treat other people who have situations that are different than us, who have life experiences that are different than us, and that every person should be treated in the way that you would want to be treated yourself. So I'm really just like, I'm sitting with everything that you've just said, and I'm feeling very sad, but I'm also feeling very emboldened and happy that we're actually having these conversations, and the fact that other people are as well, so that we can hopefully try to break down some of the pieces that are causing so much damage. Um, I want to move us to the fertility piece. Um, because I think that's where we started the conversation, right?
and now we're going to come back to it.
And now, like, it feels like, so now what? Like when, I guess for you specifically in your story, and obviously we don't know all of your story, you're sharing snippets of it. When you said it was around 8 years ago and you walked into this doctor's office and you're like, I'm here to freeze my eggs, and like you had spoken to A-Time, like when did that start coming on your radar?
It came on the radar, early to mid 30s. When you hit 30 in the Orthodox community, your clock starts ticking. You already start hearing the too old and the too old to have children. Long before the medical community would term you advanced maternal age or geriatric pregnancy or any of those terms, the Orthodox community starts your clock even sooner. So already,
Which is absurd. I just have to say, it's like totally absurd, but like, okay, keep going. Sorry.
It is absurd. It is. So already in your mid to late 20s, you're considered an older single. After 25, you're an older single.
Yeah. I mean, it's, by the way, for all of you out there, I got married at 27. Like I was an older single, like to be clear, like it's ridiculous. Like in the like outside world, the forget about the non-Jewish community, just even the non-religious community, like people are getting married well into their 30s, like late 30, whatever. Anyhow, so it's just the fact that like you're an older single post 25 is like absurd. Yeah,
Of course,
keep going.
that's absurd.
Sorry.
So we've gone from why isn't she married, or she's broken, and now we're making assumptions about fertility and oh, time
Yeah.
is running out. So then it becomes there's all of those other pieces, the twisting into the pretzel and the mismatches, as Jordana had said. Um, and then it becomes you're too old. You're too old to have children. You're too old to have a large family. You're too complicated because now you might need IVF. You're too much of a risk in that way. And what becomes even more painful, another layer of this pain, when you've already been deprioritized, when you're already dating people who are a mismatch for you, is how normalized these assumptions about fertility have become in our community. And most of them are erroneous relative to the medical community. We've made our own norms about fertility, which don't even line up with the medical and societal norms.
Correct.
So
Correct.
now it becomes you're rejected because you're too old to have children, too old to have a lot of children. And that adds to the pain. Comments like this: well, he wants someone younger because he wants a family. As if the women don't want that, as if I don't
Yeah.
want that.
Yeah.
Or he doesn't want anyone over 35 because he's a doctor and he knows. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I guess he skipped the day of medical school where they taught reproductive endocrinology. Or this one, he wants someone younger because he doesn't want to have to do IVF. I've heard that. Because as if marrying a younger woman automatically guarantees that there will not be a fertility issue, that fertility challenges are solely an older female issue. And it's not. I will say this, a little piece of my personal experience. I knew these things just as working in a medical community and knowing science. But we have a line, Aina Domesh Shmiya L'Re'iyah. There's not a comparison between hearing something and seeing something. And that first morning, I walked into the fertility clinic for a monitoring appointment. As anybody knows, when you're doing fertility treatment or egg freezing, you have to go in early in the morning for blood tests, for ultrasounds to see how things are progressing. I walked in that first morning, and there is this whole waiting room full of people, and most of them looked young. I don't know if I was expecting to see a whole waiting room of 45-year-old women. I'm not sure, but there it was. And you're trying not to look, and everybody's got their face in a phone, and I've got one eye kind of peeking out, and it really
And with sunglasses and like, God forbid you should see anyone you know or make eye contact and all the thing. God forbid.
Right.
Yes, yes.
Right. And it's like, oh my gosh, people here are young. It really, it just
All ages.
all ages.
Ages.
But it just hit me. It was like staring me in the face, or what I was like trying to peer up with one eye from the phone. So we have these assumptions that are so erroneous, and we don't push back. People would say to me, well, he wants a family. Well, he wants a younger woman. Well, he doesn't want to have to do IVF. And we're normalizing this. We're normalizing something else. So the people who are making the matches are quietly reinforcing this. So now the pressure around age and fertility becomes so embedded in the dating conversation. It's how we're perceived, and now the medical decisions we have to make. Hence the communal conversations around egg freezing.
Yep.
So here we are.
Because just to kind of like lay it out for a second from a medical standpoint. I mean, if people don't realize this yet, I'm just going to say it very plainly. I mean, if you take eggs from a woman and you freeze them, then they're frozen in time, whatever age they are. If you took them out when she was 25, they're 25-year-old eggs, so to speak. You take them out when then she's 35, they're 35-year-old eggs. Like these eggs are frozen in time. And so what that means is that they can be used to make a baby at any point in the future. The woman could be 40, she could be 45, she could be whatever age she is. Now, there is no guarantee, and I need to say this, there is absolutely no guarantee that freezing eggs, like there is not a single doctor out there that will say, if you freeze this number of eggs, that will mean that you will have a baby in your arms, period. There is not a single doctor out there that will say that and guarantee you that. What they'll say is that the more eggs of good quality that we think we can have, the more eggs you can freeze, the more likelihood that you will have a chance to have a baby. That's really what they will say, that 5 eggs are better than 0 eggs and 40 eggs are better than 5 eggs. That's all they'll say. So
Correct.
to be clear.
Yes. Yes. And to be clear, let me throw this in. There could be women who freeze 30 or 40 eggs and maybe get only 1 or 2 usable embryos at the end. And
Correct.
somebody who has frozen 10 eggs and has more usable embryos. And there is no way to predict
Correct.
that. The scientific clinical assumptions are if you freeze younger and you have more eggs, your chances are better, but that's not always the case.
Correct.
Frozen eggs, there is peer-reviewed literature that says eggs frozen in time, the success rate with those eggs will be the same as a fresh egg IVF cycle of a woman at the same age. So there is proof that this works scientifically. Yep. Does it work 100% of the time? No. Egg freezing is a reassurance policy. It's not a guarantee. So that's very important because I will get to why. So we've shifted our conversation from why aren't the women getting married to how do we preserve fertility while they wait. So we're becoming, again, going back to my original premise of this podcast, we talk so much about egg freezing now in our community, but we didn't examine the why. All of this that we just previously discussed. And around the time that I froze, somebody forwarded me a link to a talk on egg freezing that happened in a synagogue in a public place. It was Dr. Josh Klein of Extend Fertility, who is highly regarded in the Orthodox world and in the general medical community, and a very noted rabbi who was respected and considered an authority on halakha. And they were talking about egg freezing. Dr. Klein spoke about the medical and the clinical aspects, and the rabbi was saying why he got involved to endorse this. And he said, I got involved at the request of a rabbi from Pua in Israel. Pua is one of the Orthodox Jewish fertility organizations. I got involved because that rabbi called me and he said, oy vavoy, we have to do something. The Orthodox women, single women here in Israel are having babies on their own. And I just want to kind of throw this piece in. It seems that the way the progression was in Israel, Orthodox women were having babies on their own before egg freezing became a thing in Israel, while in the States it was the opposite. Egg freezing was a thing. And then when Orthodox women who froze saw that they froze and their marriage still didn't happen, they moved to the single mother by choice. And you've had Jordana Brown on, Ellie Levy, Sarah Bloom, Orthodox women who had that progression. So at that point, it was the women in Israel were having the babies before egg freezing became more of an option there. And the rabbi spoke, by we have to do something. And the way the rabbi spoke was he made it sound like these women just woke up one day and decided, I don't need a man, I'm going to have a baby. And it was so infuriating because he completely left out the whole backstory as to why this is happening. Making it look like the women did not want a husband and did not want marriage. And I believe Ellie Levy said this on her podcast with you. I'm not anti-husband. I'm not anti-marriage. There just wasn't a husband. So that is so important to state, but the rabbi completely left that out. So
like every single woman who I have spoken to, every single one of them who has decided to become a solo mom by choice, every single one, that wasn't her choice. Like her first choice was she wanted to get married. She wanted to have a baby within the confines of a relationship, a committed relationship, a marriage. But that didn't happen. And so therefore, she didn't want to also have to give up the fact that she wasn't ever going to have children. And so that was the reason why people turned to becoming single mothers by choice. It's just like, it's so fascinating to me, just as you're describing this rabbi, like just in like totally seemed to totally miss the point. Like, no, they're not just like woke up one day and decided to like have babies. Like, no, actually, like, they wanted to do this in a way that like made them just like everyone else in the community. They didn't want to be seen as different. They wanted to do things the way everyone else was. And then like the eternal question of what happens when the thing you want to happen doesn't? What happens when, like, it was supposed to happen? It happened to everybody else and then it doesn't, right? Like,
Right. And that was completely left out of the conversation.
totally,
So
totally.
and
So,
now,
yeah. So I guess my question is, like, what are your thoughts about egg freezing?
so
Like,
what are
yeah,
my thoughts? So a
yeah.
couple things I'll share. So when I'm having this conversation with this doctor who was practically knocked out of his chair that this is a thing in the Orthodox world, I said to him, this is a band-aid of sorts because we're still not fixing the problem that got me into your office in the first place. So we're encouraging women to freeze their eggs. Lectures, talks, webinars, advertisements in this Pacha family first. I mean, the publication we never thought would say anything about this. And for your listening audience, that is a more right-wing Orthodox
Yes.
magazine. So again, I do think conversations are changing around all of that. So then what? So we have all of these women freezing their eggs, but the cracks in the foundation, we're not addressing them.
Right.
So
To be clear, right? Like, it's not like the doctor, like, when you come to the doctor and you're like, actually, it's a Band-Aid, like, I'm here for my Band-Aid. Like, the doctor is not the one that's going to, like, suggest the Shidduch for you, right? Like the
right,
doctor's there to do his job.
exactly. I did ask him if he could create a man in his lab. I asked if that was possible. I did actually, because you have to have
That's so
some
great.
humor in this.
Yeah.
So
So great.
yes, so we're putting this band-aid, but are we fixing the problem that got us here in the first place? And to be clear, I want to say this: I fully support women doing this. I agree. Jackie Glazer has said this on a podcast. I think Aimee, a podcast on a different platform that you were on with Jackie, that in this day and age, egg freezing is a part of your dating hishtadlut, your dating effort, and your wife hishtadlut for anyone who's able to do this physically, emotionally, and financially. And I want to acknowledge that not every young woman can do this for one of those reasons or all of those reasons. It is not easy. It's not a walk in the park. When I confided to a relative that I did this, the response was, "Oh, what's the big deal? Everybody does that."
Oh, God.
Oh gosh. It is a very big deal to stick needles in yourself, whether 100 people are doing it or 500 people are doing it or one person is doing it. Anybody in your audience, whether if they have gone through fertility treatment that has required anything to happen outside the body in the lab in a petri dish, it is not easy. The process of getting the eggs is the same as for a heterosexual, a married couple going through IVF. Those 2 weeks are the same of the injections, of the early morning appointments. It's the same retrieval procedure to remove the eggs. The difference is, in one case, the eggs go to the freezer, the cryo storage, and in the other, they are mixed with the man's sperm in a petri dish. So it is a very involved process. It is not easy and it's costly, even though there are more clinics offering it, more programs, and insurance is covering in some cases, in many it's not. So not everybody can do this. I want to acknowledge that also.
Yeah.
But it's about women taking control. It's empowering. It's about hopefully having the opportunity to have children if and when they find the right partner, and not feeling pressured to get into the wrong relationship because a clock is ticking. And this is not only,
Hold on. I'm sorry. I just have to add
yes,
something else. Like, even though, like, the rabbi that you mentioned before, like, said, God forbid women should be having, women should be like single mothers. I, I think in today's day and age, as more people are becoming solo moms, single mothers by choice, I think that when people freeze their eggs, I think now it's like, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think it gives them that assurance that if and when there comes a time that I haven't found the right person, that maybe I still want to be a mother and use my eggs potentially, I still have the option. I think that has to be said. Like, to not say
yes,
that here is I think, is doing a disservice. And I want to also be very clear. There are organizations that are out there, like when you talked about before about how like some people can't do this because of emotional reasons or because they have medical conditions that don't like allow, they can't, it's contraindicated for them to go through these kinds of procedures and use these kind of medications. The financial piece. But speaking specifically about the financial piece, there are organizations out there that do help support and give a discount on the financial piece. Not every organization does, and you really have to do the research. But I want to make this very, very clear in black and white, so to speak, right now. In many of the Orthodox organizations, they say in their contract when they give you that discount or they give you money towards egg freezing, it says specifically in small letters at the bottom of the contract, we're giving you the money to help you freeze your eggs, but you cannot use these eggs at any point in the future to become a single mom by choice. So I'm saying that very clearly here, that anytime you sign any kind of contract, in your entire life, whether it's a rental contract, whether it's, I don't know, I'm whatever, any kind of contract, just make sure that you read all of the fine, tiny little words at the bottom, but know that it exists, that writing exists in many of the organizations that are giving out money. I have to say that as a PSA.
Wow. Yes. Wow. I did not know that. And I think, Aimee, that when an Orthodox single woman goes to freeze her eggs at 30 something, it's not I'm freezing these eggs so that one day down the road I can have a baby on my own. I don't think that's ever the intention.
Yep.
I think Ellie Levy also said that on her podcast. She said, I froze my eggs. When I froze, I wasn't thinking of becoming the single mother by choice, but several years later, it was what was I going to do with those eggs? And I believe her line was, I could make peace with not having a husband, even though she also said, I'm not anti-husband, I'm not anti-marriage.
Yep.
I couldn't make peace with not being a mother. So
Yeah.
at the point, I want to be clear. I think when she froze and when Jordana Brown also mentioned egg freezing, it wasn't so that they could become a single mother one day. That was not the intention. It was to hopefully meet the right partner. And when that didn't happen, then if you hear their conversations, the pivot happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I going to sit on my eggs or am I going to use them? I think Jordana said, those men can keep looking for younger and younger, but I'm going to have a baby with the fertility that I have. And she made that very conscious choice. So the reason that women freeze their eggs in the Orthodox world are the same as the reasons for women in the non-Orthodox or the secular world. The number one reason in the secular world why women are freezing their eggs, it's not because they were busy climbing the corporate ladder. It's because they had not yet found the right partner. And that's universal. It's not specific to our world, but it was shocking to the doctor because he knows in this world, I thought we help people find partners and people get married. So, you know, he knew that this wasn't a world where people are going to meet in bars, like what's happening.
Yeah.
So I fully support it. I believe it is an important hishtadlus in dating, in life. That is 100% how I feel about that.
Can you talk about though, like there is this idea about like, oh, you should just have faith that everything is going to work out. Like that like, you know, you need to have emunah, you need to have faith that everything is going to work out. And also like the practicalities of like what's happening now on the grounds, like that tension between communal values and like values and like the way things like actually work.
Yes. So I think that if any woman a single woman can walk into a fertility clinic and then go through this process, it's because she has faith in a happy ending. That is the faith right there. I am taking this step because I still believe in a happy ending. This is a show, in my opinion, a show of emunah, of bitachon, of strength, of trust, of a very, very strong and deep desire to create a family, hopefully within the confines of a marriage. That's, you know, I don't feel that this is a lack of trust to do this. It is, in fact, the opposite. It's having trust and faith that there's going to be a happy ending here. And I know, Aimee,
And I think also, like, I think we also should name the fact, and I have talked about this with a number of people before, but I think, like, I think it's important, like, to name here that the act of egg freezing also comes with a tremendous amount of grief in that, like, this is not where I thought I was going to be in my life. I can't believe that I'm here having to do this, but I deeply like, but I can't, like, part of my faith is practically doing something about the situation that I'm in right now.
Yes, I think it's you're holding the grief for the life that you thought you would have and the hope for the life that you still hope to have. I know that that's how I walked into a fertility clinic. This isn't what I thought my life was going to look like. You don't think you're going to have to walk into a fertility clinic because you don't have a husband. That you don't think about that. So there is that grief. My wife, I didn't get married at a younger age. I didn't follow that normal trajectory for all of the reasons we previously talked about. Those were definitely factors. There's grief and loss, but there is hope that I'm doing something. And one of the things the doctor said to me, I think because he was just so shocked at the whole thing, how this kind of came into the Orthodox world, he said, you know, this isn't a guarantee. And I said to him, yes, you're right. I know the eggs have to come out. They have to make it to the freezer. They will have to thaw one day. They will have to be fertilized. They will have to create an embryo. And that embryo will have to be implanted back into me and it will have to stick. There are a lot of steps that have to go right for a frozen egg to turn into a baby. Thank God the science is there that it does that about 50 to 60% of the time. Thank God. And I remember I said that to him. I said, but Dr. So-and-so, I know this. I know if I do nothing, nothing is a guarantee of nothing.
Correct.
But if I do something, there is a chance. And I think that he saw that I was determined, that he said, I'm going to help you with this. And to be clear, just because somebody isn't freezing their eggs or can't freeze them, it doesn't mean that they don't have a chance down the line. You could still have a chance down the line to have a child, even if you don't freeze your eggs at 30 something. I want to be very, very clear about that. That the not freezing does not translate into you cannot have a baby down the line at some
Yeah.
point, because you can. But I remember saying to him, I need to do something. I need to feel like I am making a very concrete, very solid established. Yes, it was grief. A friend of mine, a friend who kind of helped me through the process, said she went to speak to A-Time in person. She lives in Brooklyn. She said, I stood outside the A-Time office and I held my hands up. People can't see this. She held her hands up like to heaven, like somebody praying. And she said, Hashem, God, now what? Like, here I am. I'm doing this. Like, and that's how we all felt. Doing
Yeah.
this, that we are making this effort to do this. And yet, Aimee, you know, and yeah, your favorite line, we're still, you do this and you think, okay, I did this, let me go and date. We're still bringing the fertility into the conversation. You were on a different podcast about women putting a symbol on their Shidduch bio, their Shidduch recipe, their dating profile, a symbol indicating that they froze their eggs.
Yeah.
And that did not sit well with me at all.
I know I wanted to talk to you about it. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's so funny because not funny, but when I was on a bunch of planning meetings when people were talking about creating some kind of symbol, and it came from the really beautiful place of wanting to, like, a lot of things we talked about, what you talked about was how different matchmakers, Shadchanim, and different people were so, like, inconsiderate in regard to women and asking them to twist themselves into pretzels and so on. And many of the conversations that some of these matchmakers were having, and to be clear, like, this was a conversation with a few other matchmakers, that they basically said that men were coming to them and saying, I'm not going to date a person who's over 30, like you were saying before. Like, I'm not going to date a person who's over 30 or over 35 because I want to have a large family and I want a bunch of kids. And, like, it's going to be impossible to do that. And if you then said to the person, yeah, but she's frozen her eggs, then if they there's obviously a lot of education that needs to happen to the men, but if they actually understood what that meant, and then if they like, there's still a bunch of eggs out there that are preserved from an earlier age, it doesn't matter, I'm happy to go out with anyone, then these matchmakers kind of came together along with a bunch of rabbis, and they're like, is there a way that we can, without delving into somebody's real medical history and saying, how many times did you go through the process? How many eggs do you have? It just if you've frozen or if you haven't frozen, if there was just a little symbol on a girl's resume that indicated that she froze, then that maybe would enable guys to want to date older women. That's it came out of a place
Yes,
of
it came out of a place
pure really trying to help the system. And I know you have a lot to say about it. So tell me your thoughts.
Yes, but we want to help the system. But are we reinforcing, this is to help women get dates, but are we reinforcing the very dynamics that created the problem in the first place? We're still allowing people to evaluate a woman through the lens of fertility. And what does it say about the midot of a character of a man? I won't date somebody unless I have some information or assurance, I should say, of her fertility before I even take her on a date and meet her. And I believe Elisa Ben Shalom was on your podcast, and she said people want that information even before agreeing to go on a date, and she didn't necessarily agree with that. And how old are these men? Let me say this. If this becomes a conversation with a man, then how old is he? And nobody's asking the man, well, what's your story? How did you get to be single at 38, at 40, at 42, at 45? Because that's not so normal either. What's your story? Instead, it's, oh, we understand you want children. Let me find you the women who put the symbol on the resume. Now, not every woman is going to want to put that symbol on her resume. Not every woman has frozen her eggs, so she can't put the symbol. So now you're kind of putting some women further behind the eight ball. I know that the intention behind it was to help, but I just wonder, are we reinforcing the same negative behaviors that got this in the first place?
Regardless of whether there's a symbol or not, I think all people should understand biology, right? And my pushing back is saying okay, fine. You don't like this, or there obviously, I know that you are speaking for many, many people here. This is not your own personal thoughts on this specific symbol, but if this still exists, biology still exists in the way that it exists, why not give the people who have frozen the opportunity to share it in a way that feels still dignified and doesn't feel yucky?
Because I don't know that it is dignified, that if you have to provide that information to somebody before he agrees to go on a date with you, somebody who's already been in a dating process for a long time, so what's his story? Again, the onus is on the woman. And what does that say about the man's character? I can sit here and evaluate somebody's fertility, and I don't like it. And I think that is, again, it's not, I know the intention is to help a woman, but I don't know if it really does help. And this is where about our emunah, our faith and our trust come in. And as you and I were talking about this podcast, I heard a line in a speech from a rabbi, and he said there are two ways to live. One is to believe in God and live as if everything depends on you. The other is to believe in God and live as if everything depends on Him. And your role is to respond with faith, discipline, and trust. And for most things in our life, we live like the latter. That's the way we live. We believe in God and we respond with our emunah, our bitachon, and our trust. But in this space of fertility, we're living like the former. We believe in God, but we think we have control. This woman's too old. This woman can't have children. She's too old to have a lot of children. This one has a symbol. This one doesn't have a symbol on her resume. And I know, Aimee, you've said the symbol is don't ask, don't tell. Let's get real. It's not going to be don't ask, don't tell, because then the question is going to be, how old was she when she froze and how many eggs does she have? And none of that necessarily means anything. And without turning this into a medical podcast, because this is not, when this is not a medical advice space, fertility, and you know this is a doctor, and I know this is a healthcare provider, fertility is far more complex than the simplistic assumptions made in dating conversations. You are right that female age is a factor, but if you look at the statistics in general society about fertility, it is 40% female causes, 40% male factor causes, 10% combined. That means that the couple isn't getting pregnant because there's a female factor and a male factor, and 10% unexplained. And of the female factor, 40% slice of the pie. Female age is only one piece.
By the way, for all of you out there, I just want to let you know, those statistics that she just quoted are 1,000% accurate. She's basically going to have to take over my job in 5 seconds, but I'm going to let her continue.
I might, Aimee. So again, without getting too medical here, of that 40%, there are so many other female factors that are women supposed to put that on their dating resume? There are so many other potential female factors and then the male factors, and most of those aren't even known until a couple walks into a fertility clinic and they get evaluated. So I want to state this, that the female age is one piece, one of many. So for all of the men who say, I need a younger woman, that's not a guarantee that she might not have another issue impairing fertility.
And there's no guarantee, even if you get married when you're 20, as we were just talking about, right? There's no guarantee because, again, 40% men, 40% women, 10% both, 10% unexplained. The reality is when someone comes in, when a couple comes in and is having trouble getting pregnant, the assumption out there in the world is that it must be that it's the woman's problem. And that is not true. Period. Full stop.
I will say this just to throw in one other piece of my personal experience, that the doctor said to me when we were having that freezing conversation, he said his more complex cases in the Orthodox community, the ones that involve the higher level interventions, meaning the IVF, embryo created in a petri dish, are because of male factor infertility. So I just want to put that out there. So
Anecdotally.
Anecdotally. So women are still we're being evaluated through a fertility lens and through assumptions that are not grounded in the medical science. They don't fully reflect the medical science.
I hear you. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm also feeling like all this angst and like all of this, like there's so much work to be done still, and we've come so far also. And I'm like, this is the place that I'm sitting right now. I don't know, but I imagine maybe some of our listeners are also feeling that way. I want to like take us to a conclusion here, because what we need to do, I deeply believe, is that like, and I know that you deeply believe this also, that even with all of the different features of our society, of our community, and the dating system, that this is still the community that we are in. And it's our job to bring support, bring information, and bring light to some of these areas that people don't talk about very much, so that people don't feel alone. And I know that with this conversation here, we've done a lot of that. I'm curious, as we're winding down here, I'm curious if you've can you kind of leave us with a message that you'd like the people who are listening to walk away with, because they've heard a lot of very difficult things here, to be clear.
Yes. So first, I want to say that I hope this conversation is going to help a lot of women, a lot of your listeners feel less invisible, because we've talked away this taboo. Do I think that one conversation is going to move the needle? I do not, but I hope it's going to start to move it. I hope that now that we're having this conversation, there's going to be greater awareness. There's going to be more honest and educated conversations. There's going to be more empathy, kindness, sensitivity, and support, and less judgment. If you have brachot in your life, if Hashem, God, has blessed you with a husband and children and a family, please do not take it for granted or assume that's how it was supposed to be, because it's not like that for everybody. Even people who it appears on the surface should have followed the same path. Appreciate and share your brachot. Use them to give to others with less judgment, with more sensitivity, with more kindness in this time of the 3 weeks period, a time to focus. As Tzipora Brodko says, we have a Bein Adam L'Chavero problem, an interpersonal relations problem. Let's work on fixing that with more kindness to this group, with less judgment and more inclusivity, more sensitivity, and more support.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very, very much. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments about this episode or would like to suggest a future episode, please reach out at 917-382-0422 or send us an email at info@iwassupposedtohaveababy.org or info@iwsthab.org. And please don't forget to like, rate, and review so we can continue spreading the support to the wider Jewish community.